Welcome to Career Tools. This week, how to practice a presentation. The questions this cast answers are: how do I practice a presentation? Where should I practice a presentation? And how often should I practice a presentation?
Folks, the world is opening back up. This is Mark, and in June, in just a few weeks, on the 22nd and 23rd of June, we will be presenting in Chicago, live and in person, thanks to the gradual diminishment of lockdown restrictions. Again, that's June 22nd and 23rd in Chicago. We hope you'll join us, and if you want to do so, just come to the website and register. We hope to see you there.
The well-known statistic, Kate, is that more people fear public speaking than do dying, which I still can't believe. but not being afraid, the secret to that is to have practiced so much that your brain doesn't engage the fight or flight response. It just says, I know what's happening, and every time this has happened, it's absolutely fine. And then you can practice so much that presenting is actually enjoyable, which I think some people will be surprised at. But we're going to tell you what to do to get to that stage.
Yeah, it's true. You can do it. And we're going to talk about practicing out loud, getting feedback, practicing in the space in which you're going to present, practicing in your presentation clothes, timing yourself, practicing eye contact, and not relying on your slides. Going to be our focus today.
It's a nice long list.
Yeah.
So the first thing is practice out loud, which is the most important guidance we can give you. Most people don't practice, and if they do practice, they don't practice out loud. So just doing those two things will put you ahead of everybody else. And somebody recently asked me, how soon ahead of the presentation should I start practicing? And the answer is, as soon as you know you're going to have to give a presentation. Practice every day, at least once between then and the presentation, and you will be 100% better. In fact, 100% for every day. So like if it's 5 days, it'll be 500% better if you start practicing and do it every day.
Yeah, it really is so important to practice out loud. And for the rest of this guidance, the rest of this cast, we're going to assume that for some reason you're nervous about the presentation. So that's our kind of premise around why. And it could be any reason. It could be that you don't give presentations often, or that it's not material that you've presented very often, either or. It could be that you're presenting in an unfamiliar space, or that you're presenting to an audience you don't know well or who you deem important. So there's many reasons why you might be nervous, but maybe this isn't a big deal, but maybe it's not part of your norm. So it's a medium-sized deal for you, right? It doesn't have to be a huge deal. It doesn't matter that it would be an easy Tuesday morning for somebody else. It's about...
Right. Kate presents day in, day out, every week. And I'm sure there's still a little bit of nerves. There always is before you start, but it's much less than somebody who only presents once a year. But just because it's easy for Kate doesn't mean it has to be easy for you. Like, that's just a function of how often she does it and how much she practices.
Exactly. How nervous you feel really doesn't depend on how I would approach it. It depends on how you would approach it and what your experience is. And if your experience is, I've already presented for 2 hours today, and I'm going to present for 2 more after this. If you're not presenting for 4 hours a day, which I only know 3 people in the world who are, then this is going to be a little bit nerve-wracking for you. And the weird thing about being nervous before a presentation is that it doesn't make it better when someone says, oh, you'll be fine. You kind of, I think, inherently know that reassurance isn't going to change your experience. And even if it's someone you really respect or that you feel like knows you well, that doesn't get rid of your nervousness, your butterflies. The only thing that will get rid of that is practice and doing it over and over again so that it becomes routine. In the same way that, for example, if you have to drive a new way to work in the morning, because it's not routine, it makes you feel a bit more stress, right? It creates a little bit, maybe not nerves, but it is a little more stressful than your normal drive just because it's out of the norm. And for most people, presenting is out of the norm. And so we're going to assume that you need some techniques for being better and also to ease your nerves. And the good news is practicing your presentation does both. And the most important key there is if you're going to practice, you should practice out loud, which means your voice is at the same volume as it would be when you're presenting. You probably will be loud enough that your family will be able to hear you practice in another room. Although if you're presenting virtually, that's not necessarily true. They'll be able to hear that you're talking. But when you're in a virtual situation, as long as you have like a normal headset or earbuds or AirPods, microphone, something like that, you only have to speak at a normal volume. So you can shut the door and they won't be able to hear you. Although you probably should tell them what you're doing.
Especially if you don't often talk to yourself.
Right, for sure. And again, if you're in a remote environment, they're not going to notice. And honestly, it's just easier to know that they're not going to barge in. So the person who lives with me sometimes forgets that I may be not presenting because I have like a sign, but in a meeting or something, right? And so there's a certain set of nerves about like, are they going to come in? So maybe just tell them what's going on. And we're going to practice out loud, which does a few things. One of the things that it helps with is knowing which words and phrases will work for you and which won't. And also the phrasing that will make sense to the listener.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard. So there's a word I can't say, which Kate will now say.
Corollary.
Yes, I can't say that word. So if I was writing something for me to say, I would substitute that word for something else. Now, when we say Parkinson's law and Horstman's thing that comes after, I have to say it because that's in the phrase. But if I was writing something and I could choose, I would miss that word out. And there's all sorts of words that you don't know you can't say until you try and say them out loud. I didn't know that I couldn't say that word because in my head, the voice inside my head says it perfectly every time. And so I just assume that it will come out of my lips. But no, there is some kind of disconnect between my head and my lips, and I just can't say that word. And you won't discover what those words are for you. I hope that everybody has them. I hope it's just not a me thing, but I think that everybody does have them. And you won't discover what they are until you try and say them out loud.
You also might just be in a pronunciation conundrum. That's my thing is I hate to say the word GIF out loud because some people say GIF. Yes. And in my mind, it's GIF. So I say GIF. And then you know that maybe someone else says it really differently. And so you're nervous. And I don't know if there's a correct pronunciation or if it's 50-50 and it doesn't matter. And if you've never had to say that word out loud, which is probably unlikely that you've said it out loud and it's in the presentation, you're just stuck. And it could be a single word. It could be pronunciation. It could be that your brain and your lips don't know how to match up.
Sometimes it's a series of words. Like you can't say, there's a famous minister in the UK called Jeremy Hunt. And if you're British, it's difficult to say. And the man on the BBC said it wrong, which was very bad because it comes out as a very bad word that you should not say on the radio. So sometimes it's a combination of words that you struggle with.
Yeah, a phrase or even the way you say the phrase to yourself in your head doesn't translate to the way they think of it. Andrew today, our newest presenter, asked me and the other presenters, how should I say this sentence? Because I think people are getting confused. And he's right. Sometimes it's just the order in which you say it that needs to be different so that other people understand because you think of it differently in your mind. And the only way to find out what phrases you struggle with, what words you struggle with, what's going to translate well is to speak the words out loud.
Because the downside, if you don't do that, the place you find out where you can't say those words is in the presentation that you're already nervous about.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you mess up a word when you're presenting. It doesn't. People are absolutely fine. You just recover and keep going. But if you're nervous, tripping up over a word will make it worse for you. And then you'll be worried about that word and then you won't do well for the next one and so on. So don't put yourself in that position.
It's also important to keep in mind that what you put on the slide and what you say are not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have slides but no script, then you're going to have to ad hoc the script, which is going to make you more nervous because you think you know what you want to say until there's people in front of you. Additionally, even if you have a script and you haven't said your script out loud, unless you present a lot and you go from script to presentation a lot, you're not aware, most people I don't think are aware, of how long it takes to say the words that you've written.
Yes, that's true.
Even like recording podcasts, we have it printed out, right? I have our show notes printed out. And sometimes even when we print it out, we're not sure if it's going to be one part or two. And it's really hard unless you have an experience about the script versus the spoken word to understand how long it's going to take you to say all of those words, because the voice, I almost said brain voice, the voice in your brain says things much more quickly, and you think you're saying words, but I think half of that is actually just a series of like film. It's almost like a film strip. You're not actually saying words in your head.
It's images.
So you need to practice, because otherwise these words take longer to say. And there's also the piece about your voice. So you need to practice your presentation voice. And again, you'll probably need to be louder than usual in most instances, which means you need to practice, even with a microphone, you need to practice speaking at the appropriate level for the size of the room, the size of the group. It's actually difficult, if you've never done this before, to raise your voice for a long period of time, and your voice will become stressed by the end of it. And I mean, you'll have your voice will become tired. So you'll need to practice that so that you can maintain that specific volume for a certain amount of time. Especially if your presentation is more than 15 minutes, your voice will be tired at the end of that 15 minutes. It only takes 3 or 4 times to get the strength. Your voice is really adaptable. And it's something to keep in mind that you've probably not heard this voice. It doesn't sound like you. It's the voice you're going to hear is the voice you hear when you listen to a voicemail of yourself. If you ever listen to your own voicemail.
Yeah. And you go, who's that?
Right. When you hear most of the time when you hear your own voice, you're hearing it, this is going to sound weird, inside your head. And also, by the way, you're hearing it in your actual skull. So you're not actually listening to your voice. You're not listening to what it sounds like from afar.
Like, you know the words you're saying. So you're not actually listening to yourself saying those words. Your brain is actually a sentence ahead usually and thinking about what the next thing is you're going to say. Yeah, and that voice doesn't sound anything like you. It's weird. Especially if it's going to come out of a microphone. Like if you're speaking on a microphone and there are speakers in the room, you're then hearing your voice through those speakers as well as in your head at the same time. And sometimes there's a delay, or sometimes it just, the way the sound is set up on the speakers, that comes back differently. If I'm doing a presentation and I hear the first couple of words, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm in presentation mode because I'm used to that voice and I know that voice carries me through a presentation. But it's not the one I use every day. And it took me a long time to get used to that voice.
It's just a distraction if you're not used to it.
Yeah. You don't want to have that experience the first time when you're on stage or when you're at the front of the room or when you're in Zoom in front of a bunch of people you think are important.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So hopefully we've encouraged you to practice out loud, given you all kinds of good reasons to do it. Next is to get feedback. So we recommend you record every practice and review it the next day. Again, when you're watching and listening to yourself, it's strange when you've only ever seen or heard yourself from this side.
From the inside.
From the inside, from the other side of the mirror. So the first few times you review the video, you'll be focused on how weird it is, and you'll not be listening for places where you could improve. Also, when you are presenting, you don't always hear all the things that you say. You're not aware.
No. Yeah.
In order to be more aware, you should record your practice and go over it so you can listen for things that don't make sense or that are out of order or places where you routinely get tripped up. Don't review it right after, though.
No. It's like the same person if you do it right after. It's like, oh, I was awesome.
Right. It's kind of like when you write something. If you write an email and then you review it, you read it as you think you wrote it rather than what's actually there, which is how you miss typos and missed words and things like that. Like your brain is telling you, this is the sentence I wrote, when in fact, that's not necessarily the sentence you wrote. Best way to get over that is just to review it backwards, which really only for me works for numbers, but there you go. So review it the following day, review your recording of yourself the following day. It doesn't necessarily have to be video, although video is pretty easy at this point. You might want to just do audio if maybe you're driving. You want to practice in the car, you could just do a voice memo or something like that.
And it's good to do the visual and the audio separate sometimes, because sometimes you'll miss things that you're saying because you're distracted by something you're doing with your hands or whatever. And vice
Absolutely. So the following day, reviewing the following day gives you enough distance from it to be dispassionate about what happened. And you shouldn't be the only person reviewing it. You should have someone else critique it. In person would be better, someone critiquing your practice in person, because things like volume come across differently on the video or on the recording. And if that's not possible, just have them critique the recording. Send them the recording. We do this. We have a new presenter that we just hired. He records an hour every single day and puts it in Dropbox, and we review it. And it's painful. Some days you feel like you did well, and then you get the notes and you just feel crushed. I remember having to do it myself, and I'm grateful for it now, and I remember it being miserable. So choose someone to review your recordings, and maybe choose someone who's a good presenter themselves.
Yes.
Not
necessarily your mum.
Yes, right.
Your mum's awesome, but she may not have the experience. There is no point in getting feedback from someone who's never presented in front of an audience, because they don't have the experience to know what to look for and what might be distracting.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like asking a rabbit to critique swimming.
Yes. They don't often swim, rabbits. And if you haven't heard us say it before, Toastmasters is an excellent place to practice and to get informed feedback. And we like them so much, we recorded 2 podcasts about them a couple of weeks ago. So you can listen to those.
If you're relatively new in terms of listening to yourself, your recording, your critique of yourself, there's some common issues that you might want to watch out for in your practice. Filler words. Filler sounds like or some people's is so, well, I guess that's a crutch word. Somebody in one of my sessions called them support words.
Yes.
Which I'd never heard, which was really, really sweet, really high S way of portraying that. So filler sounds or kind of those. And what you should do is fill those spaces with a breath and a pause of silence.
Like no sound.
It feels weird to you. It does not sound weird to the audience. Crutch words. So, like, sometimes people make a noise. They go like a tick or something. Maybe you have a repetitive comfort gesture, like smoothing your tie, fiddling with your jewelry. Mine is I pull my sweater down.
Mm-hmm. I fiddle with jewelry, which is why I don't wear any generally, because after a while, it annoys me as well. So I just don't.
Yeah, it's distracting.
Some people hold their hands together, either praying or they hold them together on kind of that action of wringing your hands, especially if they're sweaty, like people just want to put them together.
So that it causes you to not gesture with your hands, which is it comes across to the audience as a lack of energy. And so you don't want to put your hands in your pockets or hold them together. And we call that, it's so funny. I don't think I've told you this. We call it the Kate Middleton.
Because she always stands like that.
Always standing like that. There's only 3 photos of her. She's either holding a child, walking from the helicopter, or holding her hands together in front of a beautiful dress. And you might also be a person who paces back and forth while you speak.
Yeah, or moves your weight from one foot to the other and sort of TikToks, pendulums.
Yes, so these are things to watch out for that are pretty common.
And if you think that we don't and that's because we have an awesome sound engineer who takes them all out. That's why we sound so good.
Yes.
Don't worry about it. We do it too. And you can definitely train yourself out of them.
Yes.
And that's what Toastmasters does. One of the things that Toastmasters does is train you out of doing that. And part of the training is just practice. I know if I go to Toastmasters for a while, I stop. And then when I have a break because I'm on vacation or something, when I go back, I've got worse again.
Mm-hmm. And the practice also makes you more comfortable with the words you're going to say, the sound of your voice, the idea of presenting, and you'll engage less in these kind of comfort, filler, crutch behaviors. And it's also really common to have 2 or 3 things that don't drop off, that don't go away, which you really have to concentrate on and practice to remedy. Mine is a head gesture. I bobble my head left to right, and I don't even know where I picked it up.
Mhm.
And I know I've been doing it forever. I've seen video of myself 10 or 12 years ago doing it in a social setting, completely unbeknownst to myself. And good news is it's so much easier nowadays to record yourself on audio and video and see yourself and know, oh my gosh, that's a weird gesture. Oh my gosh, that's an odd thing to be doing. And it feels totally normal. And sometimes it looks weird.
Hey, folks, if you're somebody that's thinking about client events, us coming to train you at your site, but we can't come to your site, call us crazy. But now that we present virtual events, we are available to address many more time zones. In fact, I'm recording this ad right before presenting a session for a client in India, which will start at 10:30 p.m. California time, which will be 11 a.m. in India. So if your team isn't all stateside, you might want to consider using our virtual training options for both EMC, ECC, and the Effective Hiring Manager. Contact Maggie at manager-tools.com. We hope we can help you with your very, very remote teams spread across many different time zones.
The next one is practice in the space in which you're going to present. So at least once. And if you can do it every time or multiple times, that's better. You know, if you're in a corporate setting, most spaces aren't being used at 5 and 6 a.m. So you can go in really early and present in that space, practice presenting in the space, even if it's not available later in the day.
And I recommend you do it first thing in the morning and get it over with, because if you wait all day, you will think about it all day. You will be annoyed that it still has to happen, and you will think all day about it, and it will cause you stress, even in doing your normal stuff, because your brain says to you, I should be doing this other thing. Get it over with. Do it first. You know, I always think of, there's a number of NFL players who, even when they're not playing on Sunday, they go to I almost said pitch. That's confusing my sports there. They go to the field and they're there because it's part of the routine and part of your body feeling comfortable and knowing where it's supposed to be. In the same way that you need to get used to the sound of your voice, you need to get used to the space where you're going to present. Even the space will change the sound of your voice. Your voice will be different in a bigger conference room, in an auditorium, because of the acoustics. You may simply not know where to stand, and you need to adjust to where you're going to where you're going to be standing, how much space that gives you. You have to make an assessment of how to make eye contact with a whole group of people. You may have people standing in the back or sitting down. You may have some level of, some size of group that will allow you to have to adapt. You may need to walk across the stage or the presentation area, and walk across the stage a few times, y'all. The stage adds a whole nother level to this, or a podium, knowing where the stage ends, or if there's wires, get somebody to tape those cords down.
I could trip over them even if they were taped down. So I have to know where they are.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I did a presentation recently for somebody, and it was on a stage, which I don't normally do, but there were stairs. And I took one look at the stairs and thought, oh my gosh, I'm in like heels and a dress, and there's these 3 steps. Unfortunately, the person who was presenting came to the top of the stairs and helped, and was there in case I tripped, because I was convinced I would. But stairs are horrible. But, and they can be at a different rise to the ones that you're used to. And so then your feet don't go in the right place. So if there's stairs, go up and down them a couple of times.
Yes. If there's anything that changes the height at which you're presenting, or the height at which your audience is sitting relative to you, even if you're used to presenting this, I present constantly. And the second there is a stage and a podium, everything feels different. So just to be aware of that. Also, you never know, without having been in the room, how close the audience is going to be to you. And if your gestures are big, you may have to alter those gestures. You may want to change the way the room is laid out. Honestly, I would just get rid of the podium. Get rid of it.
For sure.
Get rid of it.
Podiums. Yeah.
Familiarity with the space will make you feel more comfortable, and it will dampen that flight or fight response when it comes to time to actually present the content.
Yeah. Okay, so next up, this is very practical. Practice in your presentation clothes. It's super easy to overlook, and it seems so simple. And everyone would say, why would I need to do that? Well, Murphy's Law dictates that if you do not remove your presentation clothes from the closet before the presentation, they will be stained, missing a button, or suddenly shrunk 2 sizes. And practicing in your clothes, at the very least, means that they'll be clean and presentable on the day. And I wrote this in from absolute experience, because that presentation I was talking about where I had to go up steps, I had pulled the dress out the day before and looked at it. It was clean and it was pressed and it was fine. And it wasn't until I put it on that I realized the shoulders were constantly slipping off my shoulders. It was a little bit big. And so an hour before the presentation, I'm desperately pinning it to my underwear with safety pins. And it's really hard to do on your own shoulders without messing it up.
Or scratching yourself.
Yeah. So do it the day before, because that was stupid of me, or at least before, And that's your opportunity to find out it itches and it bothers you, or it rides up when you walk, or there's some label that, digs you in the side, or it slips off your shoulders. And all those things will distract you when you're presenting. And sometimes they can be fixed, and sometimes you'll decide to present in something else. But it's just one of those Murphy's Law things that if you don't do it, you'll have a problem.
Also, ladies, some of your pants have pockets and some of them don't. And if you wear pants without pockets most of the time, and your presentation pants have pockets, you'll put your hand in your pockets and you won't realize it until it's too late.
Oh, and the other thing for women particularly is the lights in a room. If you're on the stage, the lights can change the transparency of your tops.
Always
so that's another.
Put on a nude colored form-fitting undershirt every single time, every time you present. Always, always, always. Even if the only thing that it fixes is that the tag on the side of your sweater will not itch you. You'd be shocked at the fact that how much your dress clothes change the way you feel about just what you're doing.
Everything. Especially after 10 months of working at home and wearing loungewear.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Actually having to put a dress on the other day and heels was like, oh, this is really weird.
Heels for sure. I can't even imagine. I haven't worn, oh my God, I don't know.
You were going to say I haven't worn clothes, weren't you?
No, I was going to say I haven't worn heels in so long. I bet mine are dusty. I bet they're dusty.
Mine were. I actually couldn't remember what I had in the way of black heels.
Absolutely.
Because I haven't used them for so long.
Yep. I found a dress in my closet with tags on it because it got ordered and never worn because of a pandemic. It's really fun. Okay. Enough about clothes. Timing. We recommend you time yourself. When you're nervous, time has a way of behaving strangely. And a presentation can feel over in a flash, or it can feel that it's taking forever. And sometimes both of those things happen in the same presentation. You forgot the first 45 minutes, but the second 45 are burned into your memory. It can be really difficult to keep track of time when you're speaking, even with a clock in front of you. You need to time yourself every single practice so you know how much material you can get through. You need to know even just how much time you're spending on each slide, and maybe it's disproportionate. It's better to say less and end on time than to say more and go over. There isn't a standard speaking speed that will tell you how many words you can fit in. It really depends on what you say and how you say it. So you have to time yourself every time to figure out your speed, how long you take. This is crucial because you will, when you're nervous, pontificate and spend too much time on one side and then end up running out of time at the end, or, you're not addressing that one group because that one slide is just for them.
And different types of presentations have different speeds. If you listen to Churchill doing something motivating and inspiring, it's very slow because he wants you to hear every word that he's saying. If you're doing a presentation about something exciting, then you're going to talk so much faster. So even if you think you know how long you take to present a certain number of words, the style in which you're presenting can change, and that changes the number of words.
Yes. Really, you need just the right amount of material, and it's hard to know that until you've practiced it out loud. If you're worried about going over or under, highlight for yourself some areas where either a paragraph can be taken out or put in, or an anecdote could be added or taken out. Very good place to edit your presentation time is to remove or add anecdotes from your own experience. They should be pertinent and not over long, and they don't necessarily need to be funny, just in case you're choosing anecdotes. Also, be aware of how many questions you expect. If you think there will be a lot of questions, you need to make sure that you have time for that. If you think there will be less, you can add more. And you might also get some questions in the middle. So this is a good, the rationale here around paragraphs you could add or delete is that a question may come. Sometimes I don't get a question until 20 minutes in. When we're in person, it's 45 minutes. That takes people 45 minutes to feel comfortable asking a question. Virtually, it's about 20 minutes. Sometimes, though, I get a question in the first 5 minutes. And if you're used to your initial spiel and then someone asks a question, you get derailed. And then you're going to have to take some stuff out. Or what it means is what you had slated for later on is being moved to a different timing. And now you're going to have to know your content in a way that allows you to start from the beginning while editing out the piece that you previously covered, which can be tough if you haven't practiced, if you don't know. So definitely time yourself and do it with an analog clock.
Yes.
Analog clock tells you how much time what time that it is and how much time you have left. Don't make yourself do math.
No.
With a digital clock while you're also trying to present.
Because if you think about it, a digital clock is easy enough if you start on the hour. But if somebody introduces you, then you start at 3 minutes past. And if they're saying you've got an hour, but what you actually have is 57 minutes.
Yeah.
But starting to do that math is way too hard. Like, I've been talking for 13 minutes and I started at 3 minutes past. So, don't do that. Don't do it to yourself.
It's funny, but I got to give a plug for the Apple Watch here because I have an Apple Watch. I keep the face because you can edit the face, right? So the face has an analog view of the time zone I am currently in. And then in the center, I have a digital readout of the time in Austin because that's where I live. And so I need to know where my significant other is in terms of time zones. And that means that I can tell exactly how many minutes there are. I don't know if everybody wants an Apple Watch, but I got to tell you, and also the fact that when I get off the plane it's right.
Yes.
You don't have to guess.
You didn't have to think about it.
Time zone math. I hate time zone math. Okay. So next, practice eye contact. If there was a secret presenter hack, this is it. Probably eye contact. There isn't a secret hack, but eye contact makes a huge difference in how audiences feel about the trustworthiness and sincerity of the presenter. You can't give a terrible presentation and hope that eye contact will save you, but you can give an okay presentation and have people praise you if you've added some eye contact. So you can increase the positive response, probably not from 0 to 100, but from 50 to 75, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. It's like any conversation you have with somebody, it's a better conversation if you're making eye contact. And then we get in the presentation stage and we think, oh, how do I make eye contact with 50 people? One at a time is the answer. It's easy. And the difference between doing that and not doing that is the same as if you were talking to a person one-on-one, the difference between doing it and not doing it.
Maybe you don't have an audience to practice with, which is fine. You don't have to practice in front of an audience if you don't feel comfortable. And what you can do is you can put pillows on top of your sofa so that they're kind of at eye level. I used to have pictures of audiences taped behind my desk to practice eye contact with. And we also know someone who used their kids' stuffed animals to practice eye contact with, which is adorable and so fun.
They got to be useful for something.
Right. I have stuffed animals here. I don't know why people keep bringing me stuffed animals.
Heidi, don't want stuffed animals.
I don't want stuffed animals. I also don't want jewelry. Just, the whole Valentine's Day thing. I keep hearing these commercials that people want jewelry. I'm like, no thanks.
I'd rather choose it myself.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So practice eye contact, stuffed animals, photos, couch pillows. This way, when you actually speak, you'll be looking at the right place and it's just one less thing to think about.
You're just training your brain. When I use this voice, this is where I look.
Yeah.
And
good.
Your brain takes care of it and you don't have to. It's like driving, all those things we do automatically without thinking. Well, you can train your brain that when I use this voice, this is where I look and it will work.
Yes.
So don't rely on your slides is really important. Don't think your slides will remind you what you are supposed to be saying. They won't. You'll look at them and think, who wrote that, if you're nervous?
And you'll be done in 3 minutes because all you'll do is read your slides.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, the technology might fail. There's like, the TV might be broken. We don't have the right dongle, or the electricity goes out, or, it's just not working today. So there's all sorts of reasons why the slides might not be available. And that means print a copy of the slides to take with you. You don't have to do one for everybody, but you at least have to have one for you to look at and know this is where I am.
Yes. And even honestly, this will save you, especially because sometimes what happens is your brain gets stuck and your question to yourself is, what slide is next?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So print your slides. Print them as handouts. So go in, hit, Control P, and then when you print them as handouts, like 6 to a page. That's what I do. And then it's shorter, but you'll be able to at least see what slide is next, which is huge. Now, if you need to print them forward to a page on the handouts, that's fine. Sometimes we need bigger font. That's okay. Print the slides, take them with you, take them on the plane, take them around with you for the few days before so that you can look at them.
They become as familiar to you as everything else. And again, that prevents that whole fight or flight thing because your brain is used to them.
Yes. And we recommend this because otherwise you'll end up reading your slides and it makes for a very boring presentation. And look, if everything you're going to say is on the slides, you should have sent an email. Also, if all you do is read the slides and you have 5 slides, that is maybe a 15-minute presentation when actually you had 30 minutes or an hour or something like that. You'll need to practice until you've learned the material and don't need the slides at all. And that means breaking what you're going to say into discrete ideas that are no more than a minute long. And each idea should have a transition into the next, which will help you remember what goes next and help your audience understand where you are and where you're going.
Yeah. So if you were going to give a report for 10 minutes about the last sales in the last quarter, you would break it down like 1 minute for the introduction. 2nd minute is your bluff, like your big idea, bottom line up front. 3rd minute is the status at the end of the last quarter. The 4th minute would be environmental effects on sales. The 5th minute is legislative effects. 7th minute is, I'm reading from the show notes and I've missed the 6th minute. So if you had practice, you would know that. And that just goes to show that when you edit your own work, you miss things. So the 6th minute would be something, the 7th minute production effects on sales, the 8th minute the current status, the 9th minute plans for the next quarter, and the 10th minute your conclusion. And so all you have to learn is the introduction. And once that's 80% of the way there, then you add the 2nd minute and so on. And because you learn it one by one, you only have to remember the words for a minute, which aren't that many. And you're only remembering one idea at a time. And it also helps you with the order.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It helps you, that building forward kind of helps you. Also because the time you'll be the most nervous is in the first couple of minutes. So as you add and you do the introduction in the first minute or two over and over again, that will be your highest level of comfort with the content. And that will reduce, it'll be offset by that nervousness.
Mm-hmm. That's why when they write dictionaries, they start in the middle because otherwise A is always much better than any of the other letters.
Really?
Because they put all the effort in the beginning, because everybody does put a bunch of effort in the beginning of projects.
That's too funny.
Useless fact number 7 million. You can take note cards to a presentation in case you, like with bullet points, in case you forget what you're going to say. But don't rely on that. Learning it makes for a better presentation. And it's okay. You can have note cards. I would have note cards rather than paper because paper tends to rattle when your hands shake. If you have note cards, nobody will notice your hands shaking. Mm-hmm. Learning the material means that you're not thinking about the words you're saying, but you're making eye contact. You're thinking about your gestures. You're thinking about not tripping over. You can think about a whole different bunch of things because the words just come out of your mouth,
right?
As they're supposed to do.
You can also tell if they understand. You can see their reaction.
Absolutely, you can see the reaction. And if you present once a week, you don't need to learn every different presentation once a week because you've probably got good at this and you've got your own tricks. And probably if you do it once a week, there's bits that are the same, and so you're not having to learn all of the material each week. This is for people who don't do this very often, or it's new material, and learning it makes all the difference for those people.
Yes. The answer to presentation nerves really is practice, always. Practice, and if you want to be really good, go to Toastmasters, and always practice.
Yes. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Wendy.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next week with a new topic.